real stories of werewolves, of dogman from history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
The Werewolf Wore Green. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I never thought I'd be the guy asking strangers on the internet what to do about a werewolf. Life's funny that way, I guess. But here I am, sitting in my cabin just outside of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, watching the moon rise through my kitchen window, and wondering if I'm about to destroy someone's life by doing the right thing, or maybe destroy multiple lives by doing the wrong thing. That's the problem. I don't know which is which anymore. Let me back up. I'd rather you heard the whole story before you called me crazy. It started 3 months ago, when the leaves were just beginning to turn. I was walking my German Shepherd Max along the tree line where my property meets the Nicollet National Forest. We were doing that every evening in those days. It was our routine, and had been for the 5 years that I've lived out there. Max was usually rock solid, the kind of dog that didn't spook at anything. But that evening was different. The sun was setting early. You know how it gets in October. And there was this sort of greenish gold light filtering through the trees. I remember thinking it looked almost like stained glass, the way it caught the early fall colors. That's when Max stopped dead in his tracks. His ears went up, and I mean straight up, like satellite dishes. He started making this sound in his throat I'd never heard before. Not quite a growl, more like he was trying to swallow one. That's when I saw it. Just for a second, mind you, but that second is burned into my brain like a wildfire. A dark figure moving between the trees, maybe 40 yards in. Taller than me, but only slightly, and the way it moved wasn't quite right. The head was wrong too. I could see it clearly against that weird sunset. Pointed ears like a German Shepherd's, but bigger. And the shoulders. I've seen bears out here plenty of times, but bears don't stand like that. Bears don't have shoulders that roll and move like a person's. The figure disappeared into the deeper woods before I could really process what I was seeing. Max wouldn't move another step toward that forest. My big, brave dog was trembling like a puppy. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about those ears, those shoulders. I tried to convince myself that it was just light playing tricks, just my imagination running wild in the October twilight. But Max knew better, and deep down, so did I. Well, I wish that had been the end of it. There's another weird story to tell at the Frontier Bar over a beer, but it was just the beginning, because a week later I met her. The woman in green who would turn everything I thought I knew about my quiet life in the North Woods upside down. And now I'm sitting here watching that same moon rise, trying to figure out what the hell the right thing even means anymore. Because she's out there right now, my beautiful neighbor with her strange eyes and her endless green wardrobe. The woman I've grown to care about more than I want to admit. And she's not just out there. She's out there hunting. This is why I need your help, because I have to make a decision. I have to make it soon. There are hikers in those woods, families, kids, but there's also a woman who, as far as I know, has never actually hurt anyone. A woman who might be more scared than any of us living with her secret. What would you do? Because I've got my phone in one hand and her trust in the other, and I honestly don't know which one I should be holding on to. You know how sometimes you can feel when something's about to change in your life? There's this weird electricity in the air, and it was there that first morning I saw her. It was one of those perfect Wisconsin October days, the kind where the maples look like they're on fire, and the air smells like winter is getting ready to pounce. I was checking my mailbox, it was bills and grocery flyers, when I caught movement at the old Johnson place next door. Now, nobody had lived there for almost 2 years, not since old Jim Johnson passed and his kids decided to rent it out. The driveway is about a quarter-mile down from mine, but I had a clear view through the trees that had shed most of their leaves. I saw a U-Haul in that driveway, which was surprising enough. But what really caught my eye was this flash of bright green moving between the truck and the house. At first I thought someone had hung one of those neon yard signs out, but then I realized it was a sweater. The woman wearing it had her back to me, carrying boxes inside. Even from that distance, something about the way she moved made me stop and stare. This feminine kind of motion that made carrying heavy boxes look like dancing. I probably stood there too long, because she suddenly turned and looked right at me. I'm not usually the type to get flustered, but there was something about her eyes. Even from that distance, I swear I could feel them. Dark eyes, intense, like they could see right through you. She raised her hand in a wave, and I waved back, feeling weirdly like a kid caught stealing cookies. I spent the rest of the day wondering if I should go over and introduce myself. That's what neighbors do out here in the sticks, right? Bring over our casserole, welcome them to the neighborhood. But something held me back. Maybe it was the memory of those eyes. Or maybe it was the way Max, who was usually a social butterfly with new people, kept just staring at her house and whining. I started seeing her on my evening walks, and Max started coming with me less and less. She seemed to prefer the same twilight hours I did, always wearing something in that same striking green color. Sometimes it was just a scarf or a hat, but it always caught your eye against the forest backdrop. She moved through the woods like she knew them, like she belonged there in a way most people never do. No stumbling over roots or startling at sudden sounds, just that same feminine grace I'd noticed on the first day. The strange thing was these sightings started lining up with the times I wasn't seeing the creature. Like they were taking turns, you know? But I didn't put that together until much later. Hindsight's funny that way. All the obvious clues you miss when you're busy trying not to stare at a beautiful woman in the woods. The first time we actually spoke, she was examining some tracks in the mud near Cedar Creek. I recognize them as wolf prints. We get them sometimes, although the wolves usually stay deeper in the forest. She was crouched down, tracing the outline with one finger, wearing a green flannel shirt that seemed to shift colors with the leaves above her. "They're bigger than usual," I said, immediately kicking myself for such a lame opener. But she just looked up at me with those eyes and smiled. "Everything's bigger in these woods, isn't it?" There was something like amusement in her voice, maybe even a challenge. "I believe you're my new neighbor?" Let's call her Luna, since she is a creature of the full moon and nighttime. I won't use her real name here for obvious reasons. I should have noticed how the other forest sounds, the squirrels, the bats, even the owls in the trees, all seemed to go quiet when she was around. I should have wondered why Max, my constant shadow, had suddenly decided to start waiting at home during my evening walks. But when Luna smiled, well, let's just say there are forms of blindness that have nothing to do with your eyes. Looking back now, I can't help but wonder, was she watching me all along, deciding if she could trust me? Or was she just as caught up in this thing growing between us, this connection that felt as natural as the turning of the seasons? Either way, I was already in deep before I understood what I was in deep with. Life is weird sometimes, you know? The way things that should scare you end up drawing you in instead. That's how it was with Luna. Every instinct I had as an outdoorsman, every lesson I learned from years in these woods, kept whispering that something wasn't quite right. But there I was, finding more and more reasons to be outside at dusk. Our conversation started simply enough. Weather talk, local history, the kinds of trees growing in these parts. But Luna had this way of making even ordinary topics seem meaningful. She knew things about the forest that surprised me, like how the wolves up here hunt in patterns based on the moon's phases, or how the deer always know 3 days before a big storm is coming. One evening in late October, I remember because the sun was setting earlier every day, I spotted her near the old lightning-struck oak that marks the property line. She was wearing this bright green athletic skirt that caught the dying light like a beacon. It should have looked out of place in the autumn woods, but somehow it suited her like she was some kind of a forest sprite from the old stories my Finnish grandmother used to tell. "The coyotes are getting bolder," I said, nodding toward some tracks in the mud. They weren't really coyote tracks, they were too big. They were too human-like. But I wasn't ready to say that out loud. Luna laughed, and the sound echoed through the trees in a way that made the hair on my neck stand up. "They're not the only ones getting bolder," she said, giving me that look that seemed to see right through me. She did have a point. Here I was, spending every evening walking the same trails, hoping to run into Luna. We fell into a rhythm after that. Almost every evening, just as the day was bleeding into night, we'd find each other in those woods. She always wore something in that distinctive green. She moved through the underbrush like she was part of it, never stumbling, never getting caught on thorns. I started to feel clumsy in comparison, like a tourist at a forest I'd known all my life. But then came that night that changed everything. The moon was nearly full, painting the forest in silver light. I was later than usual for my walk. Some work calls had run long. As I approached our usual meeting spot, I caught movement in the shadows. It was something moving with that familiar, fluid, feminine grace. But it wasn't Luna. At least, it wasn't the Luna that I thought I knew. The creature was silhouetted against the moon-bright sky, and my heart stopped when I saw what it was wearing. That same bright green skirt, now stretched over a form that was decidedly not human. The fabric caught the moonlight, just like it caught the sun in the daytime, but now it was wrapped around powerful fur-covered legs. The creature turned its head, and those eyes, God, those eyes were Luna's eyes, but set in a face that belonged in a nightmare. I should have run. Everything I knew about survival screamed at me to get out of there, but I couldn't move, because in that weird moment, all I could think about was how Luna had smiled when she told me her name that first day. The creature, Luna, disappeared into the darkness with that same impossible grace she showed in human form. I stood there for a long time, pieces clicking into place in my mind like a puzzle I'd been too blind to see. The way she never met me during full moons, her knowledge of the forest's secrets, that green skirt that now connected her two forms like a signature. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The woman I was falling for was something out of a legend. Something that couldn't exist. That shouldn't exist. But here's the thing that really keeps me up at night. I'm not afraid of her. I'm afraid for her. Because in a world of smartphones and trail cameras, how long can someone like her stay hidden? And what happens when the wrong person connects the dots like I did? But when I think about the hikers who use these trails, the families with kids who camp in these woods, don't I have a responsibility to them? The Luna I know hasn't hurt anyone. But what about the other side of her? The side that prowls these woods in that telltale green? Can I really trust what I think I know about either version of her? I've never been good at moral dilemmas. Out here in the woods, things are usually simpler. You see a problem, you fix it. You find someone in trouble, you help them. But what do you do when helping one person might mean endangering others? Or when protecting others might mean destroying someone that you care about? Every night now, I watch the moon rise and I wonder what Luna is doing. Is she out there in human form, walking the trails in that bright green? Or is she running on 4 legs, letting her other nature free in the darkness? And every night, I ask myself the same question. What's the right thing to do when there might not be a right thing at all? The next morning I found my bird feeder torn apart. Not unusual in itself, bears do that all the time up here. But bears don't leave long, dark hairs caught in the metal, and they definitely don't leave behind perfect human footprints in the mud that morph into something else entirely. That was 3 days ago. She hasn't come back to human form yet, at least I haven't seen her if she has. The full moon is waning now, and I'm sitting here with a decision to make. Because I know her secret, but knowing and deciding what to do about it, well, those are 2 very different things. Part of me wants to pretend I never saw what I saw. Go back to our twilight walks, and pretend that the person walking beside me isn't sometimes something else entirely. But I keep thinking about those tracks leading toward populated areas, about families camping in these woods, about responsibility, and right and wrong. The phone is sitting here on my kitchen table. One call could bring people who deal with things like this, or it could destroy someone who might not deserve destroying. Someone who, despite everything, has never actually hurt anyone that I know of. So what would you do? The worst thing I could pin on her is a destroyed bird feeder and some scared deer. But isn't that how these stories always start? She seems so normal right up until... But then I think about her eyes, both human and otherwise, and how they've never held anything but kindness for me. I think about our conversations about protecting the forest and living in harmony with nature. Was she trying to tell me something all along? Trying to make me understand that not everything different is necessarily dangerous? Tomorrow night she'll probably be back in human form. She'll probably wear that green skirt on our evening walk, and she'll probably smile at me like she always does. And I will have to decide, do I pretend that I don't know? Do I confront her? Do I make that call that could destroy her life, or save someone else's? I need your perspective, your wisdom, your outside view of this impossible situation. What would you do if you discovered your neighbor, someone that you were growing to love, was something straight out of a legend? When does responsibility to the community outweigh loyalty to someone who's trusted you with their deepest secret? The moon is setting now, and somewhere out there, a creature in green is running through these Wisconsin woods. By this time tomorrow, that same green color will be worn by a woman with dark eyes and a mysterious smile, and I will have to decide what kind of a person I am, the kind who protects his community from potential threats, or the kind who protects extraordinary secrets from a world that might not understand them. In my situation, what would you do?
Daryl Floyd. He is one cool humanoid. Please join me in thanking tonight's executive producer, Daryl Floyd, for making this episode possible. Daryl is one of our latest channel members, and that means he gets to see our secret uncensored members-only episodes, like the one we dropped last night. Here to fill in the deets on the perks you can get for helping us stay online is our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank?
Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.